what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Today we are doing Windows Privilege Escalation Part 2. We're going to finish the box out today. We're going to do task 5, 6, 7, and I think there might be an 8 is the conclusion, but let's go ahead and get into it. Hopefully you guys are liking the content. Hopefully you guys like this path. This is the junior pen testing path, I believe. So let's go ahead and, yep, junior pen testing path. So let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully this is helping some of you guys, because I know when you get started, especially if you're just fresh into IT and you're trying to get into cyber, usually you're kind of confused by a lot of this stuff. So that's why I try to deep dive into it a little bit more to give you some background knowledge. So hopefully you guys hit that like button, hit that sub button, because it's the only way I can grow, and I really appreciate it. Also, check out the Patreon and the YouTube, or the Discord, excuse me. One thing I'll say, I don't usually spend a lot of time plugging, but the Patreon, I am trying to start actively uploading stuff for the free tiers as well. I used to only do the paid tiers, so I am trying to start giving the free tiers some stuff, some daily posters and tips and things like that. So hopefully that helps some of you guys. If it does, please let me know in the comments, because I don't know if it's actually helpful or not. But all right, let's go ahead and get started. Windows services. So where we left off last time was we were doing some quick wins, right? So one of the quick wins was scheduled tasks and permissions and things like that, right? So we're going to go ahead and get into Windows services. Now you can see here, this one they're using the service control manager. This is what is in charge of actually managing the services, okay? If you don't know what a service is, it's just a task that runs on a machine that usually it may connect to something else, or it may be an application, some of the executables that the application needs to start up, etc. So these things are the actual services running on the machine. Now, you can see here, service control manager actually is in charge of managing those, the state of the service, as you can see. So to better understand the structure, and you can see it each has an associate executable that will run by the service control manager. Now, one thing to note here, and it says it here, is service executables have a special function to be able to communicate with SCM. The reason that's important is because, like, when you're doing, and you'll see it here when we do MS Venom and things like that, if you're creating a payload, it has to have that, or else it may not be able to communicate properly, right? So to better understand the structure of the service, let's check the app host service configuration. So let's go ahead and open up a command prompt. One thing too to note is they're doing these in command prompt, not in PowerShell. It's important to note, because you will get some weird stuff if you do it in PowerShell, because PowerShell has different syntax. So we're just gonna say scqc and app host service. And you can see we're just querying the service, the SCM, about the app host service, and you can see we get the same thing, right? But the big takeaway here is this right here, this C Windows System 32 service host.exe. Why? Because that's the actual executable location. That's where we can see some vulnerabilities possibly, right? And you can see you also have who it's ran by, local system. So if that was a user account, because sometimes it is, we could try and get either pivot or escalate our privileges by taking over that user account. This is the local system, so it's basically root access. We would gain root access or admin access, right? So you can see they have a discretionary access control list, which indicates who has permission to start, stop, pause, and query them. Okay, and we can see that here we actually have full allow permissions. So the administrators are able to do everything, which makes sense, right? So then they're showing you all the services configurations are stored here in the HKLM system current control set services. The reason is you can also go in the registry and see these exact things as well. You can see local system right there. Whoops. Local system. You can see here's the executable path, all of that. So you can see it directly in the registry as well. A sub key exists for every service in the system. This is the one that we don't see, but right here it's security. If it's there, so it says here, again, we can associate the executable on the image path, which is what I just said right here. And then the object name is the local system, which is the user account. But then it says here, if access control list has been configured for the service, my hard drive keeps doing that, it will be stored in a subkey called security. So if there's a special one, there'd be a security one here as well. And like it says here, as you have guessed by now, only administrators can modify this. So if you're not an admin, you can't modify that, but they're showing you where it's located, right? And that's important that you know that in case you ever run into it. So what we're looking for is insecure permissions, right? What if this executable right here is in secure permissions, meaning I can actually edit this. Well, that could be a problem, right? So let's go ahead. This is the same thing, but we're going to do it on Windows Scheduler instead. Oops. So we did Windows Scheduler, and you can see here's our location, but service user 1 is the actual user that's going to be doing this. That's going to be running the system, or the service, excuse me. So let's go ahead and look. We can see that the service is installed by the vulnerable software run as SVC user 1. Perfect. Well, what we can do is we can check permissions on that. We can say iCalcs. Okay, and we can say C, and just copy that exact path. Program. All right, we're just gonna copy the exact path. I'm not gonna type it. Do that. So we can say C. There we go. And what we're gonna do is we're just checking the permissions on it. And right there we have built-in users have I and RX. So that's the users, and basically you can see here that everyone, if you look at the everyone group here at the top, I'm using this one over here because the the command line's so small, but the everyone group here has im modify. Everyone can modify this. That means I can replace it with a malicious one. So let's go ahead, jump over to our attack box. Actually, let's go back here because I have the attack box full screen over here. So let's go ahead and copy this, the MSF Venom payload that we're going to use. Go over here. We'll see if it pasted. Oh, it did. Okay, perfect. So make it bigger for you. So all we're doing is using MSF Venom. We're saying we want a Windows payload 64-bit shell reverse TCP. So we want a reverse shell. That's it. The L host is the attacker port or attacker IP, which we need to replace and put where was it? 1010 right there. So the L host is always yours if you're the attacker. So unless you're doing something else, which is beyond the scope of this, but and then we're using port 44445. Okay, and this should create the service called reverse service exe. And you notice under the file type we made, it says exe service, not just exe. So that's important that you make sure you do that correctly, because otherwise you're not going to have it, right? So once this comes up, we'll go ahead and serve it up on a Python web server, and we'll take a look. And this should get us our first reverse shell. There we go. Okay, so now when we say ls, there it is, reverse service.exe. So we can say python 3 tac m http.server. Okay, we're on port 8000. Then we come over here and we can say wget, and we can say http, and then the attacker IP was 10.10.123.73. And I know this is very small. So 123.73 is so that's why I'm reading it to you. I'm just doing this exact one, wget, then port 8000 because that's what we served it up on, right? And then reverse service.exe, and then we're gonna write it to reverse service.exe. Okay, wget is not recognized as a patch. Well, let's go into PowerShell then and do it. Okay. I'm not sure why they are jumping from PowerShell to command line, but that's okay. We'll just do the same thing. So wget http 10.10.173. We can just copy it here. 123.73. And then port 8000. And then reverse shell or reverse service.exe, tac L reverse service.exe. There we go. Okay, so now we should be able to say ls in here, and we got reverse service.exe. Perfect. Now all we have to do is go back to our command prompt and simply say, okay, let's go back into the location that we need to change it, right? Which we can say progress to system one. Whoops, one. So now we're in there. So now we can say move, and we want to move W service. And this is, if you're ever doing a pen test, this is best practice. If you're ever changing something on their system, you never want to just delete it, right? Like if you're doing CTF and stuff, I see people all the time, they're like, let's just get rid of that, just delete it, right? Problem with that is if that was actually functioning, like the server needed that to function, you just broke their server, and in a pen test that's really bad. So you want to always make it a backup or something, so that if something happens you can just restore it back and let them know what happened. So now we're just going to say move our C users THM unpriv reverse service.exe, and we're going to name it W service.exe. So now, as we'll see, it's already in there, right? Now we just have to make it so that it's executable. So we say W service.exe, and we want to grant everyone permissions to do pretty much everything. So now we've got the permission set up, we got the file set up, we got everything we need. Go back over the attack box, and we can simply say netcat lvmp, and the port was 4445, and that'll listen now. So now we're set up, we're listening. So now all we gotta do is start the service, right? And if you look, we can go here. Let's see if it'll actually, if it has it on here. Okay, come on, she's slow. We'll see if it actually has the services. For some of you guys, I know this may waste some of your time if you understand what a service is and everything, but I want to show you guys the visual because some people are visual learners. So you can see, we know it's running, at least they told us it was, so we'll go to status running. Okay, and you can see here's all the services, right? And here's all the services. Here's one ran by SV user 2, so we're probably going to pivot to that one here in a bit. Here's one ran by SV service 1, and we already used that one, I believe. Okay, and then the one we're looking for was the Windows scheduler, so that's actually it right there. Okay, so you can see how it says automatic running. So watch. We will say, so you could do this manually, or you could do it this way. We're going to say sc stop Windows scheduler. Okay, stop pending. Okay, now we'll refresh. Let's go back where we could see it. Okay, system scheduler. We refresh it, and that system scheduler is no longer running. You can see it's there, it's not running. So that's the service that we're actually going to go in, and we replaced the location with the file that we wanted, and we're going to start it back up. Sc start Windows scheduler. We hit start, and then we come over here, and look at that, we've got a shell. So now we say who am I, and you can see we're service user 1. So that's one of the flags right there. We'll go back up here in a second. So there it is, get the flag on service user 1. So we say cd C users, let's see, cd service user 1, cd service user 1. Come on. Okay, so we're gonna say cd service user 1, cd service user 1. Okay, apparently I can't find it because I'm just blanking on the syntax here. It's got to be one of these. There we go. You just had to put the backslash or / after it. That's why. Okay. So now when we go to dir, we see that we should be able to go into desktop. And okay, for some reason that one you can do it, but the other one you had to go specifically with the / Okay, so now we should have flag. There it is, flag.txt. So flag.txt. There's your try hack me at your service. Okay, so now it says get the flag on service user 2. So we know we're going to pivot over to service user 2. So we covered the insecure permissions on a service executable. So right there, if we have insecure permissions, meaning we can actually edit those files, that means, hey, we can actually change it to whatever we want. So now let's go ahead and query the next one, sc, and we're going to do disk sorter. Now I know they're doing VNC, but I'm just going to skip down over to the next one because I know this is the one we need. So it says here, this is why it's important that you keep understanding PowerShell versus command prompt, because PowerShell has sc as an alias to set content. Therefore, you need sc.exe to control PowerShell. Okay, so make sure you're doing it correctly if you're using PowerShell only. So now we're going to say disk sorter enterprise. And I'm going to just show you the difference here. And I just wanted to show you that you can do that, but I'm going to walk you through these two differences because they're bigger images. So you can see they did VNC server here, right? And you can see binary path name, remember the path to the executable? Well, here's quotes, and it says, okay, and it looks pretty self-explanatory, right? Like, okay, program files, real VNC, no problem, right? Well, look at this one. This one doesn't have quotes on it. Well, this is where it gets interesting because this is called unquoted service path. And what happens is when you don't have quotes like that, the system thinks that you're giving it multiple arguments, right? Because think about how when you do a like right here when we did the command scqc, right? Well, we went sc space, then an argument, qc space, then an argument, right? That's what it thinks you're doing. It thinks you're giving it the argument. So what you do, or what it does, is it actually will look for the file that you're talking about when you call on it as c myprograms.disk, and then it says, okay, I don't know where, if I think the rest of this is different arguments, so I'm going to look for disk.exe. Didn't find it. Okay, well, then maybe the sorter is sorter.exe, and the rest of this is arguments. And then, okay, then I'll look for diskers.exe. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. What it's doing is it's confused because you didn't put it in quotes, so it thinks that each piece of it is a different piece of the command. So that's why you can take advantage of this. So for instance, if we can create a file and put it in myprograms disk, and we can name it disk.exe, when it gets there, it's actually going to run disk.exe and not look for the rest of this because it thinks the rest of that is an argument. So let's go ahead and do that. So first things we're going to do is we're going to say icalcs, we're going to say C, and we're going to look and see my programs. Now, one thing it's saying here is it says most files are stored, most of these service executables are stored in program files, which is not writable or editable by regular users, only admins. So that's why usually you don't see this all like exploited all the time, but it's very common that when you install something, it will change the location, and it's also very common that a lot of people don't install things always in the right location. So that's where you find these vulnerabilities. Okay, so you can see they told us, hey, they stored this disk sorter in my programs, so that's why we did it. And if you look, we have the permissions right here, and built-in users right here, whoop, has pretty much everything that you need. You have everything. So what that means is we can actually change it, create subdirectories, all of that stuff if we wanted to. So we can go in here. So now we're going to go back into here, and we're going to copy this command because I don't want to type it out, but I'll explain it to you guys. And we're going to say, okay, let's go ahead and open a new tab. That's one thing I see people all the time too, is they close those tabs out. I just always keep them open. It doesn't take but 2 seconds, and you can keep your shell open, and just in case you need to go back, right? So now the port we're going to use is 10.10.123.73, right? And then you can see MSF-P Windows shell, same thing. The only difference is a different port, and now we're naming it reverse service.2 or reverse service2.exe. So while that's going, because it's going to take a second, you notice we're going to start a new netcat on 4446. So let's go ahead and do that. Netcat 4446. Okay, we'll let that run for a minute. Now we need to get this over to our machine, right? So we've got it sitting there. Now we've got to move it over, right? All right, so now we need to say wget, and we say, let's see if we can just get it. There we go. And now we just named it reverse service 2, I believe, right? Reverse service 2.exe. So it should be pretty much the same. And of course, we just did it the same thing. So let's go back to PowerShell. And we'll just name it 2. Okay, so now we should have it in the unprivileged. So now we just need to move it. All right? So now we just say, hey, move C users THM unprivileged reverse service, but we want 2.exe. Okay, I don't want to type that all out. Okay, reverse service 2.exe, and then C, we want to put it in my programs disk.exe because we want to name it disk.exe. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. C my programs, and then we want to name it disk.exe. So this way, the system cannot find the file specified. Where did I put it? Oh, I ran the exact same command and named it the same thing. Okay, so that's why. That's all right. What we'll do is we'll just do it this way. I overrode it anyway, so we'll name it that. Okay, so we moved it, and now we have in my programs just disk.exe, but the actual service is looking for this whole thing. But we'll see that it'll stop right here because it thinks disk.exe is what you're supposed to run. So what we can do, we already have our shell listening. We can start the service or stop the service. Stop disk sorter enterprise. And then we can say sc start disk sorter enterprise. Let me make sure my shell is set up correctly. So we can say, get over here. There we go. Okay, 4446. All right, should be good. We start it. All right, it's running. And I don't think it worked because, oh, it says access is denied to start it. Okay, interesting. So what do we have to do to start it? That's what we didn't do. We didn't grant it permissions. So should have read. So now we got to say iCalc. So basically what I did is I moved the proper service in there, the proper malicious service that I just put in there. But I did not give anyone permissions to actually execute it. So even though it's sitting there, no one can actually do anything with it. So we have to grant it access. So now we can say sc start. All right, there it ran. And here we have, now if we say who am I, we are now SV user 2. So now we can say cd users svc user 2. Excuse me. User 2. All right. And then we can say cd desktop and then dir flag.txt right there. So we say type flag.txt and THM quotes everywhere. So there we go. We've got that one. Okay, now we got to get the administrator flag. So now we got to move our way up, right? And this is more realistic to how it happened in a real pen test. You're going to have multiple stages. You're not going to usually just go straight from low unprivileged user straight to admin. Okay, so now insecure service permissions. So you might still have a slight chance of taking advantage of a service if the service executable access control list is well configured. All right, and it's rightly quoted. So should the service not the service. Okay, allow you to modify the system configuration of a service. You will be able to reconfigure the service. Okay, so what they're saying is if they even have it set where you can't run the file and there's proper quoting and all of that, what we can do, and we're going to go into CD, they've already installed it on here for you, but there's tools and there's one called access check, right? And this is the sysinternal suite. If you guys have not used sysinternals, I recommend it fully. It's a suite of a lot of tools and it's really good. And they're all very, very lightweight, simple. I keep it on a flash drive so I can just plug it in anywhere I go. All right, so we're going to check the THM service first, right? You always have to agree to it. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so now as we go through it, and you can see I'm just going to talk about it over here, you can see that the built-in users group, right here, built-in users, has all access to that service. What that means is we can actually change the service completely if we want. So before, we weren't able to change the file because that file was locked down. But what if we change where the service is looking for a file, right? Does that make sense? So before, we were just changing the file. We're saying, hey, we can edit the file and put our file in there. But now we're saying, hey, that's locked down. You can't change, you can't manipulate that file. Well, that's fine. What if we tell the service to point to another file, which is our file, right? So while we're doing that, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take this, go ahead and start our third one. There we go. So we're going to start our third MSF Venom. Are you kidding me? Okay. There we go. I don't know why it had such a tough time there for a second. I wasn't able to use the arrow keys. All right, 10, 10, not 20, 20. 10, 10, 123.73. All right, and this is 4447. So now we go back here. We can go ahead and, we've already pivoted to the other one, so we can go ahead and do netcat 4447. All right, and when that one's done, we'll go ahead and move it over, and let's keep going. So once that happens, what we're going to do is we're going to create this reverse service 3. Now, we're going to put this, doesn't really matter where, and you can see we're not actually moving it, we're keeping it. And so we'll be over here using this, using wget, but we're going to say reverse service 3, and we're going to use reverse service 3. And you can see Python simple server, it's being hosted. We go here, we grab it. Okay, now we go to dir, and we have reverse service 3 there.exe. Perfect. So now what we can do is actually go to our command prompt and say icalcs, because we need to give it permissions, right? Users, try hack me, unpriv, reverse service 3, and then we say grant everyone. We want everyone to have access. Okay, cool. What did that say? Okay, successfully processed. Great. Now, look right here. We're changing the configuration of the service. We're moving it. So we're saying, okay, sc, get that so you guys can see it, config. We want to actually change the configuration, and we're going to say try hack me service. We want to change the binary path. So the binary path is equal to, and you can see we're quoting it. That's important that you quote it, right? So you say C, and you say users, try hack me, unprived, because that's where it's at. And then we say reverse service 3.exe, and then object, which is who's going to run it. In this case, we're going to say local system. So not only could we change, here's what's cool, not only can we change the location of the binary, but we can change who's going to run it. So if we wanted admin, we can change that. So you can see we changed it successfully. We say sc stop. You got to actually specify something. THM service. Okay. And then we go here, make sure we got our reverse shell here listening, and we go sc start THM service, and we go here and look at this. Who am I? and we are in T authority system. So we actually went and got the admin account, right? So now we just say CD, we go users, and we should CD administrator, and then CD desktop, and type flag.txt, and there you go, insecure service configuration. So pretty easy stuff, but it's very easy to get these, have these make mistakes, because in a real scenario, so let's go ahead and turn this box off and start the new one. In a real scenario, in real life, you know that there's multiple people using these machines for one. That's the one thing that starts off really kind of get confusing, is who's doing what. The other thing that you got to understand is all of these permissions can be made a mistake because the person just didn't know. It doesn't make them a bad person. Nobody's an idiot for being that admin. But if you install a file if you install something, an application or a service or something, for instance, you may have no idea that it actually changed the location of the install. Well, now that has unquoted service path, and you don't even realize it. So think about it that way. But now let's move on to abusing dangerous privileges. It sounds pretty simple, but there's some that you don't know about probably. So one of them, Windows privileges, you can see they're just going to use whoami/priv. Okay, and each user has a set of assigned privileges that can be checked. Okay, so that's the user, right? Now you can see they have whoami/priv, and then you can see because we're going to go through it, but the box is starting up, so I'm just going to talk to you. So they have us actually logging in with RDP. So this account is part of the backup operators group, which by default is granted the SC backup and restore privileges. So what you can see is they're actually saying, hey, the user here, in this case, the user here is, I don't know who they're logged in as. It looks like copy master or try hack me backup is the name. They actually have some bypass traverse checking and things like that. So what these account permissions are, this backup privilege, restore privilege, all that, these are set privileges that are designed so that like I can give you access to back up my system without giving you full admin access. Well, the problem with that is I can use that to get full admin access. And you can see the way they're doing that is they're actually going to save the registry. If you don't know, there's I'm sorry, I said the registry because I was looking at it, but they're going to save the system hive. Now what that is that is all of the hashes and everything for the system. Okay, so what they're going to do is, and this is what an attacker would try to do, right, is you have to have both files. So they need the system hive and the SAM hive, right? And then they're going to go back, take them, and then try and look for the administrator permissions, right? So that's why you can see, and I'll walk you through it. So once they do that, they go ahead and save it. Then they're going to go ahead and make the directory. They're going to transport it over. That's all they're doing is transporting it. Then they're going to say, okay, we've copied it. Great, thank you. And then they're going to use unpatched to actually pull the hashes out. And you can see here's the administrator hash. Boom, they pulled it out. And then they're going to use the administrator hash to actually pass the hash. So what that means is they're not actually going to crack the password. They don't care. They're going to send it back and get a shell by saying, I am this person, right? Okay, cool. Pretty easy. We're going to do the second one because it's a fun one. It's really pretty interesting. Now, let's go ahead and close these shells because we shouldn't have a shell anymore. And we'll go ahead and clear that. All right, and we'll say xfree RDP. Okay, it's really annoying that this is not full screen. All right, let's see. Where is our free RDP? It's also weird that they don't give you the what do you call it? They don't give you the screen on this one because they require you to log into it, but they said they want you to RDP into it. So okay, let's go xfree. Come on. So what's the IP on it? 10.10.223.133. Okay, xfree. Whoops. X free RDP 10 10 2 2 3 1 3 3 2 2 3 1 3 3. Okay. Do you trust it? Yes. Password is copy master 555. Okay. It is copy master 555. It didn't ask me for the, I was gonna say it didn't ask me for the username, so I'm curious what it was saying the username was there. Okay, so we're gonna say okay, so we're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna say u for user is, what is it? THM backup. Okay, THM backup. Did I get that wrong? THM backup. Okay. Nope, didn't get it wrong. There, I got it wrong. So you can see right here, that's how you have to put the format. So I just put a space in there. So we'll do the same thing, but put the colon there. Server username, server host name is not specified. Shouldn't have to specify it. What are we missing here? What are we missing? I hate this screen, by the way, if you're wondering. It's actually driving me nuts. Okay, so apparently now we do have to specify it, even though before we didn't. Interesting. Okay, and then copy master 555. There we go. Okay, that's interesting that it made you specify it after, but it didn't make me specify it before. Okay, so we're in the free RDP. Now we should be RDP'd in, and what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of the second one. So we talked about the backup one if you have backup access, but now we're going to do the take ownership one. Now this one you can do multiple different ways, but I like the way they did this one, and I've done this before multiple times, so I liked it, and I thought, let's do it. So you can see, okay, I need the other one. Okay, so I actually have to close this. I apologize. I didn't realize there's a different one. So THM take ownership. Okay, so this is the one we're going to do. And then the world is mine. Actually, we're going to copy this. Okay, so THM take ownership. Okay, so THM take ownership. Is that right? THM. Okay, so it's THM all caps. THM take ownership. Password. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do here, as you can see, once on the command prompt, we can check our privileges, right? We check our privileges, and it says here we actually have, where is it? Take ownership. So we actually have the ability to take ownership. That is a big one, because what we can do is we can take ownership of the util man. If you don't know what util man is, it's this little thing right here, this nice, easy use thing they use, right? What it does is it allows you to kind of do some things while you're still on this screen. Well, since we have full ownership of it, we can just change what we run when that gets called on, right? So what we can say is we can take ownership of it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take ownership of the util man. Once it's taken ownership, we grant permissions, right? We want everyone to have permissions to it. And then we just replace it. We say, hey, I know util man is right here, and that's where it's going to, when it actually runs, it's going to call on that. I want you to actually do this. I want you to run command.exe instead of util man. Just replace them. Put command.exe there. Let's see what happens, right? So let's go ahead and try that. So first, we're in here like swimwear, right? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to take ownership. So we open up command prompt. Maybe. Okay, so we run this as admin. Well, it's asking us for our password, which was the world is mine 2020. And we may not have permission to do this, so let's see. Okay, it's not going to work, so the world is mine 2022. The world is mine 2022. Okay, there we go, and it ran. So now, and some of you may say, like, well, you're still running it as administrator, so you can do whatever you want. That's not the case. You still have limits to what you can do based on what account you are. So now we just got to take ownership. And you notice we're taking ownership of the file, not of any specific service or anything, right? So we're going to say, okay, I can't actually do that. So what we're going to do is take ownership, take own, tech F, or /F for file, and then C, Windows, system32, and then utilman. So we're taking ownership of the utilman exe. Now we have ownership of it, right? Because before the local system probably owned it, right? Now we own it. So now we can say iCalcs, and we could say we want to go C, Windows, system32, utilman.exe, okay, utilman.exe, and then we're going to say grant. And what we're going to do is we're going to give, you can see, our account the access. THM, what was it? Take ownership. Okay, perfect. So now you can see here, notice that being the owner of the file doesn't mean that we have privileges over it. That's what they're saying. We own it, but we still didn't have the privileges. So we had to grant ourselves privileges. That's what we did. So now all we're going to do, look at this. We're going to copy. So we're already in system32. That's important that you notice that, because otherwise you're going to copy nothing. So copy cmd.exe to utilman.exe. And we say copy it, overwrite, yes. Okay, now it's copied. So now all we got to do is lock the account, right? Now it's locked. And watch this. When we click ease of use, look at that. Instead of running utilman, it runs a command prompt. And we are in T authority system. So this is one of my favorite ones because it is something that I've seen, and it is something that is kind of unique, and a lot of people don't know that utilman's the one that runs that. So there's all kinds of things you can do, but let's go ahead and get the flag before we forget. So get the flag on the admin desktop. So C users administrator desktop, and then type flag.txt, thm c se flag privilege. Okay, so thm se flag privilege. Oh, didn't get it right. Se flag privilege. I spelled privilege wrong. Okay, se flag privilege. Come on. I really wish I could spell. Jesus, I really wish I could spell today. So we've got the flag, right? So now let's talk about the SE impersonate, and then the SE primary. So the impersonate token, a lot of people say, like, I've heard people when I show this on stream and stuff, like, what's the point of, why would you ever have that, right? And why would you ever have an impersonate option? And it's actually a really good question, and here they lay it out really well to explain that. And what it is you can see, so let's say we're Anne here. I'm not going to read everything, I'm just going to show you, but let's say we're Anne. Anne wants to authenticate to Anne's files, right? But she should not have access to Jude or Bill's files here. Well, the FTP service is the one grabbing the files. So if they didn't have an SE impersonate token, right? If they didn't have this SE impersonate privilege, then what would happen is Anne would ask FTP for Anne's files, but FTP would be the account grabbing the files. So therefore FTP service would actually be using their own permissions to get it. So what would happen is FTP service would actually have access to everybody's. So what they do is they can actually reach out and impersonate Anne to do a task for her. I see this all the time, and it's really good. It's really good if it's done implemented correctly. But the problem is we can take advantage of that, right? So let's start by assuming we already have access to the compromised host running IIS. So here is the host, right? And we're going to go here. We can close this. And we're not going to get crazy with it, but we're just going to show it. You can see here it is. I'm just going to show you the website. We're not going to go through it all because they show you exactly how to do it. But we're going to go to the website so you can see that I'm not just making this up. We're following along with what they're doing. And what it is they're pretending that they already took over a host, right? They already took over a IIS server, which is a web server, right? So here it is. We could say, who am I? And run it, right? And there you go, your IIS default pool. Okay. The reason that's important is they're showing, that's what this screen is. That's what they're walking through. They're showing you that website. So if you get a web shell, this is what it would look like. You wouldn't have a program and a run button, but you would have a web shell that you can take advantage of. So you can then go and say, who am I privilege, and see what you can access, right? And that you can see that they have the impersonate privilege. So they're going to use rogue WinRM, right? Because they need to upload. The first thing they need to do is upload that rogue WinRM, but they do that because it's already on there for you. You start netcat listener, and then what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, so we're going to grab our web shell, right? They're putting it all in here in the web shell, and they're saying ctools rogue WinRM. So they're using rogue WinRM here, and they're going to actually execute, and the payload is ctools netcat64. So they're using netcat, and then they're going to get command exe to attacker. So they're using WinRM to reach out, but the key here is right here. This is how WinRM works, okay? The key here is this impersonate privilege. So the rogue WinRM exploit is possible because when a user, unprivileged user, starts the bits service in Windows, okay, it will automatically create a connection to 5985 using system privileges, okay? Follow me. Port 58985 is typically used for the WinRM service, okay, which is simply a port that exposes a PowerShell console. Think of it like SSH, but PowerShell. Perfect. If, for some reason, WinRM service isn't running on the victim server, an attacker can start a fake WinRM, which is rogue WinRM, service on port 5985 and catch the authentication attempt made by bits when the service is starting, meaning when you go to connect, it's going to catch that authentication. Well, if the attacker, meaning our user here, has impersonate privileges, guess what? When it goes to a connect, it's using the system account, and I can impersonate that account now because I have impersonation privileges. So then I can actually connect using system because I'm impersonating system, right? So that's how it works. And then you can see we get a full shell right there. All right. So lastly, let's go ahead and say this one has its own machine. So we'll terminate this machine and we'll say, all right, unpatched software. This is something that actually happens a lot. Unpatched software has many vulnerabilities. We see it all the time, but unpatched software is a big vulnerability, especially if it's public facing, right? So software installed in the target system. Well, okay, this one doesn't have you log in. Excuse me. Okay, unpatched software. Software installed in the target system can present various privilege escalation opportunities. Exactly. Drivers, organizations, users may not update often. So what we can do is we can use WMIC product get name version vendor and look for any malicious software, or not malicious. I'm sorry, any software that is outdated, right? So once we have gathered product information, you can use ExploitDB, PacketStorm, Google, whatever, and look for vulnerabilities. Pretty self-explanatory. This is something you should be doing with most of your stuff anyway. So the target server, this one specifically, is using Druva InSync 663, which is vulnerable to privilege escalation. Okay, the vulnerability results from a bad patch applied over another vulnerability. Okay, so they tried to fix one and they basically made it worse. So a patch was issued where they decided to check the executed commands starting with boop, C program data Druva InSync, where the allowed binary was supposed to be. Okay. This proved insufficient since you could simply make a path traversal attack to bypass this control. Okay. Suppose that you wanted to run system command, which is not allowed. You can just do a quick directory traversal and change it, and that would bypass the check. Okay. So what they did is they tried to put a check in place, and you're able to get around it. Perfect. To put together a working exploit, you need to understand how to talk to port 6064. Luckily for us, the protocol is in use is straightforward. Okay, so what they're going to do, hello packet, remote procedure, command length, command string. So the command length has to be 62 characters. Okay, perfect. So the first packet is simply a hello. So if you guys don't know what directory traversal is, all it is this is the check. They wanted to make sure you are running this. Well, they were able to then just say, okay, right after that, go back directories and then go to command.exe, and it would say it bypassed the check, right? Because it's saying, well, you are running this. That's all I'm checking for, right? So the first packet is simply a hello packet that contains a fixed string. Second packet indicates that we want to execute procedure number 5, as this is the vulnerable procedure. Perfect. So we know we need 5. The last 2 packets are used to send the length of the command string to be executed. So we were telling it 62 characters, and the command string, there it is. Perfect. Sounds pretty easy to me. Okay, now you can pop a PowerShell console and paste the exploit directly to execute it. Okay, the exploit is also available on the target machine, so let's just do it that way. And you can see all they're doing is here, the header, there's your hello file, there's your characters, and he's execute number 5. Here is your actual thing, and then here's the length. Pretty easy. So C, and then they're just sending the header in that order. Tools, and they said Druva InSync exploit, so we can open this. And then we'll open up PowerShell. Maybe. And all this is this is actually very common that these sometimes will get different applications will get exploits, and people will say, oh, we don't need the comments in there. People will say like, you got to patch this right now or whatever. And then if you have a company where maybe it's an internal application, it's not public facing, the risk kind of goes down, things like that. So this is something where maybe this is a big deal to you, maybe it wasn't. It depends on your organization, right? I would say it's a big deal because you can privilege escalate, but okay, so now we got here, we should be able to copy and paste it, hit enter. Okay, so looks like we got 22.4.4.168. Okay, so it says that the exploit's default payload specified in the command variable will create a username pwned. Okay, I didn't change the default payload. So you can see, where is it? But won't assign him admin privileges. Okay, so we probably want to change the payload. Probably should have known that before we did that, right? Okay. So we probably want to change the payload for something. Okay, so let's see. There's the command. Probably should have changed that before we ran it, but okay, so let's go ahead and copy the whole thing again, right? This is why you read before you just execute, right? Okay, so now we want to go up. We're going to go to net user pwned. And we want to change it to net user pwned simple pass 123 add and net local group administrators pwned add. Okay, so now we should be good because now we added him to the users, right? Supposedly. So now we can say net user pwned and see. I typed user. There we go. And you can see we are a part of the local admin group. Perfect. So now all we got to do is say cmd run as admin, and you can see we can say more choices. We can use pwned, and we can use his simple pass 123. And I typed it wrong. Simple pass 123. Oh no, I typed his password wrong. Okay, well I did his password wrong, like an idiot. Okay, so let's do the same thing. Simple pass 123. No, I didn't. I'm wondering if, let's just do a new user, because most likely what happened is, wait, that's not the one we want. Okay, so we're just gonna recopy. I'm gonna change the user from pwn to something else, because, okay, so we're gonna say net user, and instead of pwn, we're gonna do stuffy, and then we'll say simple pass 123. Okay, my guess is it wouldn't work because the account already existed, so it wasn't adding, it just did the and local group administrators stuffy add. Okay, there we go. And then we just go back to power. I don't know why I went away from PowerShell. And then we say net user stuffy, and we're local admins. Okay, so now all we have to do is say cmd again, run as admin, go back here, and now we have stuffy here, and we say simple pass 123. And if it ever loads, we're in. Look at that. cd c users administrator stuff. I don't know why I went to. Now we say cd desktop, and then we say pretty easily type flag.txt, and now we say thm easydll proxy for me. Perfect. So pretty easily, that one's pretty simple. Basically they have a vulnerability already existing, so you're able to just take advantage of it. Now, tools of the trade, I don't think we need to dive too deep into this because we've used a lot of these. So we didn't use WinPeas in this, but WinPeas is one that will actually run through and tell you where vulnerabilities exist, where you can escalate privileges. That's a really good tool, but keep in mind a lot of EDR tools and things like that will detect this. But if you're using it for defensive purposes, it's really good. Priv check is a PowerShell script that searches common privilege escalation techniques. So you can see, there you go, priv-esc. All right, now Windows exploit suggester. Some exploit suggesting scripts like WinPeas will require you to upload them to the target system and run them there, which is what we talked about. This may cause, okay, I just said that, antivirus software to detect and delete them. Boom. Okay, so now you may prefer WesNG, Windows Exploit Suggester Next Generation, which will run on your machine. WesNG is a Python script that can be found here if you want to download it. Once installed, before using it, type Wes, make sure you update is what it's saying. The script will refer to the database it creates to check for missing patches that can result in vulnerability. So what they're saying is you have to update this all the time, otherwise you're not getting the best information. And there's very few things that I'm like, you have to update nonstop. But these types of things you do, because if a new exploit comes out and you haven't updated, it's not coming out with it. So to use the script, you need to run the system info command on the target system. So you will need to run the system. Do not forget to direct the output to a text file. So you need it to be on a text file, right? Then Metasploit, we've used Metasploit plenty. You guys understand, but they do have a exploit suggester if you want. So that does it, guys. Hopefully this helped you guys. This was a long video. That's why I broke it into two, because the last one was a half hour. This one was an hour. I knew it was going to take a while. I wanted to actually walk you guys through it and kind of show you guys more than just simply reading the text, and see if that helps you guys. If it does, hit that like button, hit that sub button. This takes a lot of my time and I really enjoy doing it, so I want you guys to enjoy it too. So make sure in the comments you tell me what you want to see, what's different, what I can improve on. Thanks guys, see it.